let's talk about this Israeli ceasefire deal. It is quite clear that Joe Biden did not have a situation where he couldn't influence the Israelis to push them to a ceasefire. It is quite clear that Joe Biden never exercised any of the tools at his disposal to influence the Israelis. The Leahy law, other laws, U.S. laws on the books that says based upon Israeli actions, we could stop funding, providing them offensive weapons or any type of weapons, or just unilaterally deciding to do that. We had State Department officials quit over the fact that it was clear the State Department was ignoring specialists on this. Like, the evidence is impossible to ignore that Joe Biden, you want to argue that, well, even if he had done those things, the Israelis would have kept going. That's a theoretical argument. The one reality we know is that Joe Biden never pressed and used his resources in the way that Reagan had, let's say, with Menachem Begin, et cetera, et cetera. We also know that Kamala Harris did not publicly break with Joe Biden. I speculated during the run-up to the election based upon who her foreign policy advisors were, as opposed to McGurk and Hochstein, who are... I think Hochstein's literally an Israeli.
Used to be in the IDF, yeah.
That her top national security advisor, Phil Gordon, who had been Obama's and worked on the Iran nuclear deal, was going to signal a change in policy. We don't know. We also said during the election that when Miriam Adelson, sometime I think it was over the course of the summer, put out her demand to give Donald Trump over $100 million. She personally gave him $100 million for his campaign, and then had a network that provided tens of millions of dollars more.
Did a fundraiser for Just Israel at his golf course in Bedminster around the summer, which was, by the way, around the time that Netanyahu did his little jaunt down to Mar-a-Lago, and there was a conversation, multiple seemingly probably conversations between Donald Trump and Netanyahu, which I think are relevant with the timing of this news.
Oh, absolutely. And we heard her say, like, last time, Sheldon and I, her late husband, we asked for Donald Trump. We said, we want the
Golan Heights.
No. We want the embassy in Jerusalem, and he gave it to us. And then as a bonus, we never even asked. He gave us the Golan Heights.
Exactly.
And she uses we. I think she's also an Israeli citizen as well, American and Israeli citizen. And so we speculated at the time, as Donald Trump was saying, like, the day that I get into office, Hamas will cease fire. And of course, everyone who follows this with any modicum of objectivity knows that the reason why a deal has not been struck for any ceasefire during the course of this is because Israel has refused to do it. They have moved the goalposts multiple times. Biden tried to hem Netanyahu in by announcing this at one point, that it was the Israeli proposal. And then Netanyahu turned around and said, like, well, we reject it.
Ben-Gvir was bragging today about how many ceasefire agreements they blocked, while the entire time the administration publicly was saying that it was Hamas that was the obstacle. Well, so they were lying to not use cut off arms at all, but still hoping a ceasefire would happen, but not doing any of the steps to actually get a ceasefire.
Ben-Gvir is saying that they're still going to try to fight this one, and looks like if Trump's going to be the one to say, no, we're actually going to push this through, it doesn't look good for Biden.
Definitely.
It doesn't look good for Biden. It doesn't look good for Biden, period. Because I think, like, you start with the baseline. I think it's like incontrovertible that Biden never exercised the tools that were at his disposal to end this. I don't think he wanted to dictate whether it be ended, period. And Donald Trump, I think, he wants the ceasefire there. And I think the deal is, this is how you're going to get the West Bank. We're going to annex the West Bank. Now,
and Netanyahu needed a way out too.
It is, and I offer this without an assessment as to whether it's worth it. It's certainly, for the slaughter that's going on, you want to stop the slaughter is the first thing that you want to do, in my estimation. But I think a lot of this that we're hearing from the Netanyahu government, that their hands are tied with the Trump, is exactly what they would have said if Biden had exercised any of this. But they're also, this is part of the KFAB, in my estimation. But here is a scroll up just so that we can. Netanyahu's chief proponent on Channel 14, Errol Siegel. And here we go. This is, and I'm going to read the subtitles. When Trump was elected, what was I doing here? I was wrong in thinking that the first to pay the price for his election would be the Ukrainians. It might be that we are the first to pay the price for Trump's election. Because in this deal, I don't want to say we're trying to get into it. I wouldn't meddle in it, and I don't know all the details, so I'll be more cautious, etc. But I don't think this is what we planned and what we expected. We thought we were talking about other things. We thought we would take control of the northern strip, that's of Gaza. They would allow us to prevent aid from entering these areas. Thus we would impose pressure on Hamas. What is happening? And we need to tell the truth to the viewers. If 1 million Gazans return to the northern strip, the IDF will not return to fight in the northern strip. We won't redo this whole event, and remove 1 million people from there. It's not going to happen. He's lamenting. We need to tell the truth. It might be that they will remain in parts in the Philadelphia perimeter, etc. But 1 million people returning to the northern strip ends the story. And another thing.
So we slowed that down a bit so we could read the captions.
But the bottom line is you're starting to hear Israelis complain and attribute this to Trump. Haaretz reported that Trump's would-be or soon-to-be ambassador to Israel got very rough with Netanyahu. They said, we can't talk to you right now. It's Shabbat. And he goes, I don't care about Shabbat.
Mike Huckabee?
No,
some other guy. Huckabee would never.
It was
Steve Witkoff. He's the envoy.
He's the envoy. I'm sorry, he's ambassador, but literally envoy. This Jew who doesn't care about Shabbat, doesn't recognize Shabbat in Israel. Okay, and I don't care about Shabbat. You better do this, or Donald Trump's going to be mad. And that's the story that we're getting. And there is no doubt in my mind that Donald Trump wanted this win.
Of course.
It is a win for him. And at the very least, in the short term, it is a win for Gazans if Israel is not able to stop aid and is forced to stop bombing, without a doubt. But I think we don't need more proof that Joe Biden was not interested in keeping the Israelis from stopping. And B, I suspect that Joe Biden was not going to sign off on the annexation of the West Bank. Other people can make an assessment as to whether that's a trade that's worth making. But I think within a year of Donald Trump being president, I don't know, we could look back on when the Jerusalem move happened. I think that happened in the first 16 months of his presidency last time. We looked that up. I suspect we're going to see Israel annex the West Bank and the U.S. signing off on it.
The reality is just that I pray that this is real and that there's some relief for people in Gaza who've been experiencing a genocide and whose lives will be forever ruined by the trauma that they've seen if they do survive. I hope that Donald Trump and the Israeli government allow independent journalists to go in and verify the true death tolls, because we know that it's been undercounted by at minimum 41% of the figures that we have, but it's likely higher than that based on the study published in The Lancet that came out last week. But I also think we need to start talking about Biden's mental capacity and as it relates to this. Like, at the very least, he should have understood that he was getting humiliated. Like, he lived through Nixon conspiring to undercut talks that LBJ was having during Vietnam. He was a senator during the Iran hostage crisis, where Carter's hostage negotiations were sabotaged by a back deal with Reagan during an election year. Reagan won, and then on the day of his inauguration, the hostages were released. And that was like a similar 400 plus days around a very similar timetable to this.
I feel like it was like 5:35. I remember when
the headline said 4:44. I saw last night I went to the New York Times archive to look this up. And this is Trump met with Netanyahu in July. We have the photos. The ceasefire was allegedly reached a week before Trump's inauguration, which was as predictable as possible. And at the end of the day, like, I don't want people to take this as if this is like an excuse for Biden or for Harris or whatever. No, it's an indictment on the fact that they should have known that this was the political reality just for their own ass, just for their own self-interest, specifically Biden. And that's where we go back to some of the reporting about. It's just Hochstein and McGurk and Sullivan running this damn show because it's like West exec.
Dad's taking they've gone to the Bahamas for like a month and a half and we own the house.
It feels rudderless because it probably is and run by Zionists and national security, like establishment, to use that word, stalwarts who wanted to push through their agenda because this is like the think tank environment here in the United States. It's very Zionist.
You mentioned Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter didn't want to hear more about what happened to cost him that election. And this is a broader problem with Democrats. And the whole thing about them appearing weak and people thinking, well, look at all this war stuff going on. Let's get a strongman in. They just confirmed that stuff. Yeah. And all this stuff. And there might be like, disclosures and reporting that comes out later that mitigates it and, Israel's actions like in the West Bank. But my problem is, I don't have confidence that if Harris would have won, she would have been able to put brakes on them. Like, I think that the West Bank might have been annexed under the first woman president if she had won. And so, what's the difference? The difference is a ceasefire was secured before he was inaugurated. And I don't know that would have happened had Harris won. And that is catastrophic. And which is not even to mention the other thing that guy mentioned, which is Ukraine. And I think that's also Trump is saying we need to start enlisting 18-year-olds or what, not enlisting, forcing to fight. But like the Dems have abandoned, and it goes to the top of the show, the USS George W. Bush and stuff. Like this is, they've tried to win the military party thing, and I think it's going to be a Pyrrhic victory.
No, it's been a disaster.
Yeah, and we were saying this to Representative Jayapal. I came into politics animated about voting for Obama and the Democrats because I hated the Iraq War so much. Like, what has Biden done in terms of, like, not just destroying the liberal international order? Like, we're seeing liberalism kind of falling apart before our very eyes. Claudia Sheinbaum down in Mexico has an 80% approval rating and is bragging about how, like, we begin by uplifting the poor, and then you have the Democrats collapsing and Trudeau having to resign up north. This is a failure of this kind of political philosophy, and I'm hoping that in the end there's some changes made, but I don't know.
All right. Do we have time for? Yeah, we got time for.
Oh, and can I say one more thing about this?
Yeah.
For all of Trump's faults, and it is endless. He's a psycho and one of the most selfish people ever to be born. He's at least a transactional politician. And to Matt's point about like validating the strongman thing, he cares about the PR of the dead kids, right? Just like that's what he was saying at the time. Just get it done and get it over with. Like, at the very least, he shows a level of responsiveness that I think we shouldn't dismiss, because again,
that's why he's popular.
The Biden administration didn't listen to the overwhelming calls to get him to step aside for a new nominee, which did not demonstrate Democratic responsiveness. And again, this is before Harris, to have a real primary. And he also, despite his base screaming at him and the rest of the country saying, what is this? Like, why are we funding this genocide? He didn't show responsiveness on that either. So, like, there is a level of just like the calcification within the Democratic Party is really harming the good and undercutting the good things that the Biden administration did, and is leading us towards a fascist presidency in Donald Trump. Potentially.
I mean, since we're piling on too, it is astonishing to me that the only time we ever hear from Barack Obama and he exercises any type of like political power seems to be to basically stop the left from ascending. Like, Obama seems to me to have been the person who could have gotten Biden to step aside.
Yep.
I get it. It's time consuming. You got to go. You got to pitch. You got to go. Like you got your Netflix deal, and you got to pitch, and you got to meet with producers. And I've been there.
Yep.
I've been there. It's exhausting. And the idea of stepping in and saving the country from
it's a lot to chew.
from Donald Trump.
Yeah.
But I do appreciate the fact that he could be, he's not going to let that get in the way of perhaps, maybe having some type of marginal impact on Donald Trump in the White House. I mean, that's the thing that really, really drives me crazy is the absolute hubris and arrogance that Obama displays in terms of his ability to personally sort of like change things. I just remember in the run up to the 2010 elections where he just basically went into a caucus meeting with Democrats in the House and the Senate and like, I got this. And it turned out he did not got this. He maintained his position. We lost 1,000 Democratic office holders across the country. That's why we had this sort of dearth for years of like, wait, where's our bench in this? Why is the guy, mayor from Indianapolis, like an actual choice in this election? Because there was no other state officials. Do we even have any governors that ran that year?
Yeah.
In 2020, do we even have any governors? Like,
no.
What like why is that? Is because in 2010 and in 2012 and in 2014 and in 2016 the Obama administration had so undermined any outside organizing and had so refused to provide any sort of like use any of their political cachet to create an environment for Democrats that like Secretary of State in 2010 loses, some Democrat in like half a dozen states, that state senators lose. They can't go on to become governor. And that's basically it. So,
Yep. And it's ideological for Obama. It's part of why he was okay with that Citigroup list for his cabinet officials. He genuinely, I think, believes in like individual,
we need to capitalize bankers and you folks. It'd be nice if we could help you, but it's just not efficient.
He's like a believer in bootstraps and like and his own kind of individual power. He's not a collectivist politician.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.